At my husband's company gala, he leaned close to my ear and said, "Don't embarrass me. Just stand there and smile." He said it while adjusting the cufflinks I had bought him for his promotion, without looking at me, as if I were part of the outfit he had selected for the evening and regretted at the last minute. The ballroom was all gold light and glass walls, full of executives in dark suits, women in satin dresses, waiters carrying trays of champagne, and my husband moving through it like a man finally standing in the life he believed he deserved. I stood beside him in a dark green dress I had chosen, because it was simple enough not to attract attention. That was always the rule with Grant. Be present but not noticeable. Smile but do not start conversations. Listen but do not correct him. Look like a wife but never like a woman with her own history. "Please, Clara," he added, his smile still aimed at the people across the room. "These are important people." I nodded. Then I stepped aside. I had learned over 14 years of marriage that arguing in public only gave him new material for private punishment. So I moved toward the edge of the ballroom, near a tall arrangement of white orchids, and folded my hands around a glass of water. 5 minutes later, the chairman of Archer Vale Industries stopped in the middle of his welcome speech. Arthur Vale was 70, powerful, and famous inside Grant's world. The kind of man my husband spoke about with hunger in his voice. He was standing on stage thanking donors and executives when his eyes swept over the ballroom and landed on me. The microphone lowered in his hand. His face went pale. Then he stepped down from the stage and walked straight toward me while 300 people turned to watch. Grant stiffened beside the bar. The chairman stopped in front of me, staring at the thin scar across my left wrist. Then he looked at my face. "My God," he whispered, "it's you." I did not know what to say. He took my hand in both of his, and his voice broke in front of the whole company. "I have spent 16 years looking for the woman who saved my grandson." The room went silent. My husband's face lost every trace of color. Because the woman he had just warned not to embarrass him was suddenly the most important person in the room. My name is Clara Ellis, though for 14 years people mostly knew me as Mrs. Grant Ellis. That sounds small because it was meant to be small. Grant did not introduce me as Clara unless he had to. At office dinners, he would touch the small of my back and say, "This is my wife." Then quickly move the conversation back toward quarterly numbers, client strategy, or whatever ladder he was climbing that month. If someone asked what I did, he answered before I could. "She keeps things running at home." That was not entirely false. I did keep things running: bills, groceries, dry cleaning, his mother's prescriptions, his father's insurance forms, the calendar that made him look thoughtful because I remembered birthdays, anniversaries, condolences, baby gifts, and thank you cards. I handled the parts of his life that did not photograph well. He handled the applause. Before Grant, I had a life he rarely asked about. I worked hotels. Front desk first, then night management, then guest safety coordination for a downtown conference hotel that hosted charity galas, business summits, weddings, school trips, medical conventions, and every kind of public emotion a lobby can hold. I loved the work. Not because it was glamorous. It was not. People yell at hotel workers over towels as if towels contain their souls. I loved it because I was good at noticing. A man pacing too close to the elevator, a child standing too still in a lobby. A guest speaking loudly so no one notices the person beside him is afraid. A door propped open that should not be. A story that changes the second time someone tells it. My mother used to call me a watcher. She meant it kindly. I had been that way since childhood, quiet on the outside, always mapping the room. Grant admired that at first. He called me perceptive, grounded, calm. Later he called it overthinking, suspicious, embarrassing. Marriage did not erase me overnight. It sanded me down. First, he corrected my clothes, then my laughter, then my opinions. Then the way I told stories. At parties, if I spoke too long, his hand would find my elbow. At home, he would say, "You don't understand how corporate people hear things." Eventually, I stopped speaking before he had to correct me. By the night of the gala, I had become very skilled at disappearing in expensive rooms. That was why Arthur Vale walking toward me felt almost frightening. Visibility, after years of practice at being invisible, can feel like danger before it feels like rescue. The night I saved Arthur Vale's grandson began with a rain delay, a broken espresso machine, and a little boy wearing one red sneaker. 16 years earlier, I was 29 and working night operations at the Harrington Grand Hotel. It was one of those old downtown hotels with marble floors, brass elevators, and a lobby so polished it made guests assume nothing bad could happen there. That assumption was useful to bad people. The hotel was hosting a children's hospital charity weekend. Donors, doctors, board members, families, volunteers, local news crews. The kind of event where everyone wore name tags and pretended security was easy because children were surrounded by generous adults. I remember the boy because of the sneaker, one red, one blue. He could not have been more than 7. Dark hair, serious eyes, navy sweater, little paper dinosaur tucked under one arm. He stood near the lobby fountain watching the revolving doors spin. I noticed him because children in hotels usually move constantly or cling to adults. This child stood still, too still, with his shoulders up around his ears. A man stood beside him, not close enough to look obviously threatening. Close enough that the boy kept glancing at his hand. I asked the front desk clerk, "Do we know them?" She shrugged. "Probably with the hospital group. Probably is not security." I walked around the desk and approached with my hotel smile, the one that says welcome while my brain counts exits. "Hi there," I said to the boy. "Cool dinosaur." He looked at me, then at the man. The man answered for him. "We are fine." That was the first wrong thing. Adults who belong with children usually let children answer harmless questions. I smiled wider. "Of course. Are you waiting for the shuttle?" "Yes," the man said. The boy shook his head almost invisibly. Second wrong thing. My body knew before my mind finished. The man placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and guided him toward the west elevators, the ones that led to the parking bridge instead of guest rooms. The boy's eyes found mine for half a second. "Please." Not a word, a look. I moved. I picked up the desk phone and said loudly, "Security to west elevators. Code Amber." There was no code Amber at the Harrington Grand. I made it up. The man heard it. His grip tightened. The boy stumbled. I walked fast toward them, not running because running makes predators run too. "Sir," I called, "I need you to return to the desk." He turned with a smile that was not a smile at all. Then he said, "He is my nephew." The boy whispered, "No." That one word changed everything. People imagine hero moments as clean. They are not. They are messy, physical, ugly seconds when your body makes decisions your mind has not approved. The elevator doors opened. The man pulled the boy forward. I reached them at the same time and stepped between the child and the elevator. The man's shoulder hit mine. The boy cried out. I grabbed the nearest thing I could reach, which happened to be the strap of the dinosaur backpack hanging from the boy's arm. The man hissed, "Let go." His voice had lost its public shape. I let go of the backpack and pulled the fire alarm. That sound saved us. Alarms are terrible in hotels. Lights flash, doors release, elevators freeze, guests spill from ballrooms, staff run, security stops pretending nothing is happening. The lobby became chaos in 3 seconds. The man tried to push past me toward the parking bridge stairs. I caught the boy around the waist and yanked him behind me. That was when the man grabbed my wrist. Hard. He twisted so sharply that I felt skin tear against the metal edge of my bracelet. I still have the scar. A thin line across the inside of my left wrist, pale now, but raised if you run a finger over it. I do not run a finger over it often. I screamed then, not beautifully, not bravely. I screamed the way women are taught not to scream because it sounds uncontrolled. "Help! He's taking the child." The man released me and ran. Security caught him at the service corridor because the parking bridge doors had locked when the alarm triggered. Later, I learned he was not a relative. He had been watching donor families all evening, looking for confusion, wealth, distraction. The boy was named Oliver Vale. His parents had stepped into a closed-door hospital board meeting for less than 10 minutes. His grandfather, Arthur Vale, had funded the pediatric wing opening that weekend. I did not meet Arthur that night. I met Oliver's mother briefly. She was shaking so violently she could barely speak. She hugged her son until he cried that she was squeezing too hard. Police asked me questions. Hotel management asked me why I pulled a fire alarm without authorization. A detective took my statement. My wrist bled through 2 napkins before an EMT cleaned it. When the news vans arrived, my manager told me to stay in the staff office. "Families want privacy," he said. I was fine with that. By morning, the story had become, hotel security prevents attempted abduction. Not Clara, not front desk night manager. Hotel security. I was not offended. I had a double shift starting that afternoon. I went home, wrapped my wrist, slept 4 hours, and returned to work. 2 months later, I left the hotel after a new general manager cut staff and blamed me for creating liability exposure by pulling the alarm. That was the official reason. Unofficially, I had made the hotel look unsafe. Saving a child embarrassed the brand. I told Grant the story once. That is the part that hurts differently now. We were dating then, maybe 6 months in, sitting in his apartment eating takeout from cartons because he said restaurants were overpriced unless someone else paid. He noticed the scar on my wrist while I was reaching for soy sauce. He caught my hand gently. "What happened?" I told him the shortened version. Hotel lobby, little boy, strange man, fire alarm, security, wrist injury. He listened with the expression men use when they like a woman but have not yet learned which parts of her threaten them. "You're serious?" he asked. "Yes, you saved a kid from being taken?" "I helped stop it." He kissed the scar. "That is incredible." For a while, I believed him. Then years passed. The story became inconvenient because it did not fit the woman Grant wanted me to be. At a dinner early in our marriage, someone joked that I seemed too quiet to handle a crisis. I started to say, "Actually," Grant interrupted. "Clara is more of a behind-the-scenes person." Everyone laughed kindly. I swallowed the sentence. Later, in the car, I said, "Why did you do that?" He looked genuinely confused. "Do what?" I was going to tell them something. He sighed. "The hotel story? Yes, babe, that story sounds dramatic. People might think you're exaggerating." I stared at him. "You believed me when I told you." "Of course I did," he said too quickly. "But you know how people are. It is hard to verify, and it was years ago. Why bring it up?" Hard to verify. That phrase did more damage than he knew. Or maybe exactly as much as he intended. After that, I stopped telling it. The scar remained, but scars are silent unless someone asks the right question. Grant never did again. By year 10 of our marriage, he had rewritten me completely. I had not been a hotel operations manager. I had worked hospitality. I had not handled guest safety. I had done front desk. I had not saved a child. I had one dramatic story from before we met. I let him make me smaller because fighting for the full version of myself felt exhausting. What I did not know was that Arthur Vale had spent years looking for that full version. He had hired investigators, called the hotel, requested police records, found sealed juvenile references and generic staff notes, but not my name. The hotel had changed ownership. Employees moved. My last name changed when I married Grant. My statement, misspelled as Claire Barrett instead of Clara Bennett before I became Ellis, vanished into clerical fog. All he had was a description, a first name, and a scar mentioned in an EMT note. And then, 16 years later, he saw my wrist in a ballroom. The gala was meant to be Grant's night. That mattered to him more than the marriage itself sometimes. He had been chasing a vice president role for 3 years at Archer Vale Industries. He studied senior executives like scripture. He knew what bourbon the COO drank, which board member loved golf, which regional director had divorced badly and hated jokes about marriage. He knew Arthur Vale's public biography almost by heart. Self-made logistics empire, philanthropy, pediatric health foundation. Grandson rescued years ago in a hotel incident, details kept private. Grant mentioned the grandson story once while reading an old article. Vale is obsessed with child safety because of this, he said, barely looking up. Apparently some attempted kidnapping thing, company myth-making. I was washing dishes. My hands went still. Where was it? He shrugged. Some hotel, why? I almost told him again. Then I remembered hard to verify. Nothing. He did not notice my silence. The night of the gala, Grant was already tense before we left. He rejected my first dress because it was too loud, though it was burgundy and perfectly normal. He rejected my second because it made me look like I was trying too hard. I chose the green one in self-defense. Elegant, quiet, forgettable. In the car, he rehearsed names with me. If you meet Paul Renner, do not mention his divorce. If Sandra Cho asks about my team, say I am passionate about mentorship. If anyone asks what you do, just say you manage home and volunteer sometimes. I do more than that. He glanced at me. Clara, tonight is not about proving anything. No, I thought. Tonight is about making you look like the kind of man who deserves more power. I did not say it. At the ballroom entrance, he put his hand on my back and smiled for a photographer. The photo probably looked beautiful. A handsome man in a black suit, his wife in dark green, both polished by gold light. No one seeing that picture would know his hand was pressing just hard enough to guide me like furniture. Inside, he left me within 11 minutes, not accidentally, strategically. I watched him orbit executives, laughing, touching shoulders, leaning in as if every conversation had been waiting for him. Twice, he introduced me as his wife and immediately shifted away before I could speak. Then, when I stood too close to a group discussing the Children's Foundation, he returned, leaned in, and said the words that would ruin him. "Don't embarrass me. Just stand there and smile." I did. For exactly 5 minutes, then Arthur Vale saw me. When Arthur took my hand, I felt the room tilt. Not because I recognized him. I did not. The boy I had saved had been named Oliver, and I had never connected him to the man now standing in front of me. Arthur's face belonged to financial magazines, company videos, and Grant's anxious ambition, not to a rain-soaked lobby from another life. But he recognized the scar. His thumb hovered above it without touching. "I know this mark," he said, voice trembling. "The EMT report," said the woman who stopped him, had a cut across her left wrist from a metal bracelet. Oliver remembered green eyes, dark hair, a calm voice. "He said you told him to hold your jacket and not let go." Memory hit me like cold water. I had forgotten the jacket. I had taken off my black hotel blazer and wrapped it around Oliver because he would not stop shaking after security carried him away from the elevator. I told him, "Hold this. If you hold it, I can find you again. Children in panic need jobs." I knew that instinctively then. "You found Oliver?" I whispered. Arthur's eyes filled. "He is 23 now, law school. Still hates elevators." A small broken laugh escaped me. "I am sorry." "No," Arthur said, gripping my hand tighter. "Do not apologize. He is alive to hate elevators." The room remained silent around us, but it was not empty silence. It was the charged silence of people understanding they were witnessing a private earthquake in public. Arthur turned toward the stage, then back to me. "May I tell them?" My first instinct was no, not because I wanted secrecy. Because I had spent years believing visibility brought correction. If I took up space, Grant would punish the space later. If I became the center, he would call it embarrassing in the car. If I accepted gratitude, he would find a way to make me ashamed of needing it. Then I looked across the room. Grant stood near the bar, eyes wide, jaw tight. I saw the warning there, the old warning. "Do not make this worse for me. Something inside me." Something buried under 14 years of careful smiling, answered him quietly. "No," I turned back to Arthur. "Yes," I said, "you may tell them." Arthur led me to the stage, not pulling, not claiming, just offering his arm. The crowd parted. Grant took one step forward. Arthur's assistant, a sharp woman in silver glasses, stepped into his path with professional politeness. "Mr. Ellis, please wait." He froze. For once, the door opening for me did not automatically open for him. Arthur returned to the microphone with me beside him. 300 employees, spouses, board members, donors, and executives watched. I could feel every eye. The old Clara wanted to shrink. The woman from the hotel lobby, the one who pulled an alarm without permission, stood her ground. Arthur's voice carried through the ballroom. 16 years ago, at a children's hospital charity event, a man attempted to abduct my grandson from the Harrington Grand Hotel lobby. Gasps moved through the room. He continued. "Our family kept many details private. Oliver was a child. We wanted to protect him. What most people never knew was that the person who stopped the abduction was not a security officer, not a police officer, not someone paid to stand guard. She was a hotel night manager who noticed what everyone else missed." His hand hovered near my shoulder, respectful, not possessive. She blocked the elevator, pulled the alarm, fought hard enough to injure her wrist. Then she comforted my grandson until his mother arrived. She disappeared before I could thank her. For 16 years I have searched for Clara. He turned to me. Tonight I found her standing alone at the edge of my company's ballroom. The last sentence landed with more force than I expected. Standing alone, people looked toward Grant. He looked like he wanted to disappear and be seen at the same time. Arthur continued, "Now colder. I asked an employee earlier this evening why Mrs. Ellis was not seated with leadership spouses. I was told she was shy, that she preferred not to draw attention. I now understand she may have been taught not to. My throat tightened. Grant's mouth opened as if to object from across the room, but no sound came. Arthur looked directly at him. Mr. Ellis, your wife saved my grandson's life. Did you know? Every head turned. Grant forced a laugh. She mentioned something years ago, but I had no idea it was your grandson. That was technically true, and spiritually damning. Arthur did not blink. You knew your wife once risked herself to save a child, and you still warned her not to embarrass you tonight? The room froze. Grant's face went red. I did not mean. Arthur lowered the microphone slightly, but his voice still carried. Men rarely do, yet somehow the harm arrives fluent. No one applauded. They did not need to. The silence did the work. After Arthur's speech, people came to me in waves. Not everyone. Some were too awkward or too loyal to Grant's version of the hierarchy, but many came. The COO shook my hand and said his daughter was 7 and he could not imagine. A woman from legal hugged me after asking permission. A young analyst said, "You must have been terrified," and I realized no one had asked me that before. Was I terrified? Yes. I had been terrified in the lobby. Terrified when the man grabbed my wrist. Terrified when hotel management blamed me for protocol violations. Terrified again, years later when my husband made my own courage sound like an unverifiable inconvenience. Fear had been present the whole time. It just never got to be the main character. Arthur asked if I would sit at his table. I said yes. Grant began moving toward the seat beside me, assuming humiliation could be repaired by proximity. Arthur's assistant intercepted him again. Chairman Vale requested Mrs. Ellis specifically. Grant smiled tightly. I am her husband. The assistant smiled back. Tonight she is his honored guest. I sat beside Arthur at the front table, while Grant returned to the general seating area alone. The symbolism was not subtle. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. During dinner, Arthur told me more about Oliver. Panic attacks after the incident. Years of therapy. His decision to study law because he wanted to protect children from systems that failed quietly. His mother's guilt, though she had only stepped away for minutes. Arthur's own obsession with finding me, not because he wanted to make a spectacle, but because his family had a missing name in its survival story. A missing name changes a memory, he said. It leaves gratitude with nowhere to go. I thought about my own missing name. On family cards Grant signed from us, on decisions he called his, on stories he edited, on the life I had helped build while being introduced as a quiet wife. What will Oliver think? I asked. Arthur smiled. He will be furious he was not here. That made me laugh. Across the room, Grant watched us. He barely touched his food. Every so often, someone leaned toward him and said something. He nodded, smiled, adjusted his tie, performing damage control before the damage had finished arriving. Near dessert, Arthur asked gently, "Are you safe at home tonight?" The question struck harder than praise. Not are you proud? Not are you overwhelmed? Not how wonderful is this? Are you safe? I looked at Grant. His smile at a colleague was perfect. His eyes were not. I do not know, I said honestly. Arthur nodded once. Then let us make sure you are. I did not go home with Grant that night. That was the second public shock. Arthur did not make a scene. He did not announce anything. He simply asked his foundation director, Miriam, to accompany me to a quiet side room. Miriam was in her 50s, calm, direct, and had the energy of a woman who had seen powerful men behave badly in expensive rooms and no longer found it impressive. "Do you want your husband brought in?" she asked. "No. Do you want transportation home or somewhere else?" "Somewhere else." The phrase opened a door in my mind I had not let myself touch. My sister, Nora, lived 20 minutes away. Grant disliked her because she asked plain questions. I had not told her much about my marriage because admitting too much would make her say what I was not ready to hear. I called her from the side room. She answered, "Why are you calling from a gala? Did he ditch you again?" I started crying. Not delicately, not attractively, all at once. Nora's voice changed. "Where are you?" I told her. She arrived in 19 minutes wearing sneakers, no makeup, and the expression of a woman prepared to commit several felonies if necessary. Miriam escorted me through a staff corridor so I could avoid the ballroom exit. Arthur waited near the service doors, coat over one arm. "I am sorry," he said. "You keep apologizing for other people's behavior." He absorbed that. "You are right." Then he handed me a card, not his personal number at first. Miriam's. She runs our family foundation, not as charity, as resource. If you need legal referrals, housing support, counseling, anything, call her. No obligation, no debt, no debt. Those words mattered. Grant called 11 times before Nora pulled away from the hotel. Text messages followed. Where are you? Do not make this dramatic. You are humiliating me. Arthur Vale is manipulating you. Come home now. We need to present unity. Clara, answer me. Nora glanced at the phone on my lap. Present unity? She said. He sounds like a press release with a wedding ring. I laughed through tears. Then another message came. If you make me look abusive, I will make sure everyone knows you are unstable. Nora's face changed. Screenshot it. I did. That was the first piece of evidence after the gala. Not the last. The investigation into Grant began because he overplayed his hand. Men like Grant are dangerous when embarrassed because they mistake panic for strategy. By Monday morning, he had already told 2 executives that I was emotionally fragile and that Arthur's public recognition had triggered an unhealthy attachment to an old story. He suggested I had exaggerated my role in the Harrington incident, perhaps due to attention after years at home. He also implied Arthur's interest in me was inappropriate. Unfortunately for Grant, he said some of this in an email to Human Resources. Even more unfortunately, he copied Arthur's assistant by mistake. By noon, HR had opened a conduct review. By 3, legal had requested records around Grant's expense reports, promotion materials, and management claims because once someone lies loudly about his wife to protect reputation, people begin wondering what else reputation has been protecting. What emerged was not criminal. It was worse for Grant's image. He had taken credit for a junior analyst's retention model. He had manipulated client satisfaction survey summaries by excluding low-scoring accounts from early drafts. He had padded travel expenses in ways small enough to dismiss individually but obvious in pattern. He had listed spouse attendance at 3 leadership dinners where I had not been invited, using my name to justify expenses for meals with clients. He had made me useful even when absent. Arthur did not personally lead the review. That would have been improper, and Arthur Vale cared about propriety when it protected truth rather than power. But he authorized independent counsel, and independent counsel did what independent counsel does when a man leaves too many fingerprints on his own myth. Grant called me that week from his office. I was at Nora's kitchen table, wearing borrowed sweatpants, drinking tea, staring at my scar. Clara, he said, voice controlled, this has gone too far. What has? You know what? Vale has people digging through my work because of you. Because of me? You embarrassed me publicly. I stood there. You let him attack me. He asked if you knew your wife saved his grandson. You didn't save his grandson alone. Security caught the guy. That sentence told me everything. Even then, he could not give me the full truth. He had to subtract, I said. You once told me people might think I exaggerated. Now you are one of them. Silence. Then, come home. No. His voice dropped. You will regret making an enemy of me. I looked at Nora, who was watching my face. I put the call on speaker. Say that again, I said. He hung up. Oliver Vale called me 9 days after the gala. I had not expected that. I had imagined him as Arthur described him. 23, law student, adult version of the boy with 1 red sneaker. But when his name appeared on Miriam's carefully arranged call schedule, my stomach tightened. What do you say to a child you saved who is no longer a child? He answered that question for him. Hi, Clara, he said, voice nervous. I am sorry if this is weird. It is weird, I said. He laughed. Good, then there was silence. I remember your jacket, he said finally. My throat closed. I remember you telling me to hold it. I remember thinking if I held it, I would not disappear. That probably sounds childish. You were 7. Still. I sat on Nora's back steps while autumn leaves moved across her yard. My wrist scar looked pale in the morning light. I am glad you are safe, I said. I am because of you. Those words should have felt good. They hurt first. Gratitude sometimes presses on bruises you forgot were there. I have wanted to know your name for a long time, he continued. My grandfather made it into this mission. My mom lit a candle every year on the date it happened. We called you the lobby angel when I was little. I laughed despite myself. That is excessive. I know. I was 7. It stuck. Then his voice changed. I also wanted to say I am sorry your husband made that night about him. I watched the video. The video had spread inside the company before anyone could stop it. Not viral online, thank God, but everywhere that mattered professionally. Arthur taking my hand, Grant's face, the question. Men rarely do. Yet somehow the harm arrives fluent. "I am sorry you had to watch it," I said. "I am not," Oliver replied. "I have spent years thinking the woman who saved me must have gone on to be celebrated somewhere. I hate that you were not." I looked out at Nora's yard and cried quietly enough he might not hear. He heard anyway. "Maybe you can start now," he said, 23 years old, still carrying a frightened 7-year-old inside him, offering me permission no adult had thought to offer. "Start now." I wrote those words down after the call. Then I taped them inside Nora's guest room closet, where I could see them every morning while borrowing her clothes. Start now. Leaving Grant was not a dramatic escape. It was paperwork, passwords, bank accounts, phone calls, and the humiliating discovery that I did not know the login for our own internet service because Grant had decided years ago that I was not technical. It was Nora standing over me while I changed every password anyway. It was Miriam connecting me to an attorney named Layla Ward, who listened to my story without once tilting her head in pity. It was opening a personal checking account at 43 while the banker asked if I wanted paper statements, and I nearly cried because the answer was mine alone. Grant did not hit me. I say that because people often ask the wrong question first. He did not need to hit me to make the house small. He had contempt, correction, financial control, social humiliation, professional superiority, and the steady patience to make me doubt whether the full version of myself was worth defending. Layla called it coercive control. I called it marriage for too long. When I went back to the house to collect my things, Nora came. Miriam came. And a police standby met us at the curb because Layla insisted. Grant opened the door in a pressed shirt and the expression of a man trying to look wounded for witnesses. "This is unnecessary," he said. Nora looked at him. "So was telling your wife not to embarrass you." I packed clothes, documents, my mother's jewelry box, and a stack of sketchbooks Grant had once called clutter. I had forgotten I kept them. Pencil drawings from before marriage. Hotel lobbies. Faces, shoes, hands, a little boy's mismatched sneakers, drawn from memory years before I knew why the image stayed. Grant saw the sketch and went still. "You drew him?" "I guess I did." He looked shaken. Perhaps because evidence of my inner life had been sitting in our closet all along, quietly refusing to disappear. In the bedroom, he tried one last time. "Clara, you are blowing up 14 years because an old man flattered you in public." I folded a sweater. "No, I am ending 14 years because the first time someone saw me clearly, you treated it like an attack." His face hardened. "You will come back." I zipped the suitcase. "No," I said, "you will just keep expecting me to." That was the difference. Grant was suspended for 6 weeks and demoted by winter. Not fired. That disappointed people who wanted clean justice. I understand. A man publicly humiliated, professionally exposed, personally abandoned. Stories like this seem to demand ruin. But life rarely hands out endings that symmetrical. He kept a job, not the job he wanted. Lost the vice president track. Lost his direct team. Lost the trust of executives he had spent years impressing. The junior analyst whose work he had claimed received formal recognition and a promotion. HR mandated leadership ethics training, which made Nora laugh so hard she had to leave the room when I told her. "Imagine needing a class called Do Not Steal Credit," she said. The divorce took 7 months. Grant fought the narrative more than the assets. He wanted mutual language, irreconcilable differences, privacy, no mention of emotional abuse, no mention of threats, no mention of financial control. Layla advised me where compromise was practical and where language mattered. "Do not let legal neatness become another place you disappear," she said. So were honest enough, not theatrical. Honest during that time, Arthur kept careful distance. He sent one letter, handwritten, thanking me again and assuring me the foundation's support remained available regardless of any personal connection. He did not call late at night, did not rush in as rescuer, did not ask for emotional access because gratitude had opened a door. That restraint meant more than flowers. I began volunteering at the Vail Foundation's child safety and survivor support programs. At first, behind the scenes, reviewing hotel safety training materials, teaching staff how to read situations without profiling people unfairly. building protocols for lost child alerts that did not depend on a single employee's instinct. The first workshop terrified me. Standing in front of 20 hospitality workers, I felt Grant's voice in my head. Do not embarrass me. Then I looked at the slide behind me. When a child's story and an adult's story do not match, pause the adult. My voice shook for the first minute, then steadied. Afterward, a young front desk clerk came up and said, I always thought I was being paranoid when something felt off. I told her, your attention is not paranoia just because someone else finds it inconvenient. I heard myself when I said it. Maybe for the first time, a year after the gala, Archer Vale held another event, not the same ballroom. Arthur said he never wanted me to feel trapped inside a replay. This one was at the Foundation Center, a restored brick building with classrooms, counseling rooms, a legal clinic, and a children's play space painted with murals of forests and stars. The event honored community safety workers, nurses, hotel staff, bus drivers, teachers, librarians, people who notice danger before it becomes headline material. Arthur asked if I would speak. I said no. Then Oliver asked. I still said no. Then a woman from one of my workshops told me her team had stopped a child from leaving with an unrelated adult because they used the protocol we built. The child was safe. The mother sent a thank you card. The front desk clerk cried in the break room afterward because she had been so scared to speak up. I said yes. On the night of the event, I wore a blue dress I chose because I liked it. Not because it was quiet, not because it was safe. Because when I tried it on, I recognized myself. Arthur introduced me, but briefly. No myth, no angel, no savior language. Just Clara Ellis, safety advocate, trainer, and the woman whose attention changed my family forever. I stood at the podium and looked at the room. Hospitality workers in uniforms, social workers, police liaisons, donors, survivors, Oliver in the front row beside his mother, Arthur near the aisle, Nora recording badly with her phone held at an angle that would probably make the video unusable. I began with the truth. For years, I thought my value depended on staying easy to ignore. The room stilled. I thought being calm meant being quiet. I thought being a good wife meant being careful not to outshine a man who kept moving the lamp away from me. But attention saved a child in a hotel lobby 16 years ago. Attention saved me later. Not someone else's attention only, but mine. I finally paid attention to how small my life had become. My voice did not shake. Every person in this room has been told at some point not to make a scene. But sometimes making a scene is how you keep someone safe. Sometimes pulling the alarm is the most faithful thing you can do. The applause came slowly, then all at once. Not like the gala. That applause had been shock. This was recognition. Afterward, Arthur found me near the mural of stars. You do not have to be found anymore, he said. I smiled. I know. And I did. There is one more part of that hotel night I did not remember until Oliver said the word jacket. After the police took the man away, Oliver would not let go of my sleeve. His mother was crying, security was talking over itself, and the lobby was full of guests who suddenly wanted to know why alarms had interrupted their champagne. Oliver kept asking if the man knew his room number, over and over. Same question, same terrified voice. I told him no, though I did not know. Then I took the little paper dinosaur from where it had fallen near the fountain and handed it back to him. One corner was wet. He looked at it like proof he was still himself. What is his name? I asked. Rex, he whispered. Rex looks brave. He is not, Oliver said. He is scared. Brave things are usually scared first. I forgot saying that. Oliver did not. On our first phone call, he repeated it back to me, 16 years later, word for word. He said he wrote it on a notebook during therapy when he was 10. He said it helped during panic attacks. He said it helped again when he testified in court at 13 after the man appealed part of his sentence. I had thought my role ended when the elevator stopped. Sometimes kindness keeps moving long after you leave the room. That is why Grant's dismissal hurt so deeply later. He did not just minimize an old story. He minimized all the years that story had continued living in someone else. The hotel never apologized. I was written up for unauthorized alarm activation and failure to follow guest intervention chain of command. Chain of command. As if a frightened child and a man pulling him toward an elevator were going to wait politely while I found a supervisor. The write-up sat in my file for 2 months. Then the new general manager called me into his office and said, "We appreciate your instincts. but instincts create liability when they are not managed. I remember looking at him, this man in a tailored suit behind a polished desk, and realizing he was more upset by the alarm than the attempted abduction. I resigned before he could fire me. That resignation changed my path. I left hotel operations, took administrative jobs, met Grant, got married, and slowly let the whole incident become something too complicated to explain. If I had been praised then, maybe I would have carried the story differently. But the first official response to my courage was discipline. That teaches a woman something. It teaches her that saving someone can still get you labeled difficult. So years later, when Grant called me dramatic, there was already a file inside me prepared to believe him. Arthur's recognition did not only correct my husband, it corrected the first institution that told me the alarm was the problem. 2 years after the gala, the scar on my wrist still catches light when I reach for things: coffee, door handles, microphones. The hand of a woman in a workshop who has just admitted she is afraid to go home. Sometimes people ask about it. I tell the truth now. Not the whole story every time. The truth does not have to be performed to be real, but I no longer call it nothing. Grant remarried eventually, according to a mutual acquaintance who told Nora and then pretended she had not meant to gossip. I felt less than I expected. Not nothing. History does not vanish because paperwork is final, but no collapse, no longing. Just a distant sadness for the woman he would likely teach to shrink unless she came in already knowing how not to. Arthur remained in my life. Slowly, carefully, not as the man who rescued me. He did not, he witnessed me. There is a difference. Rescue can create another debt. Witnessing returns something stolen. We became friends first. Then something more, much later than anyone expected, and slower than a story would prefer. Oliver teased him mercilessly. Nora interrogated him over dinner. Arthur endured both with grace and a terror I found charming. But that is not the ending. The ending is not a powerful man choosing me. The ending is me choosing the full version of myself, whether or not anyone powerful is watching. Near the end of this video, I want to ask you something directly. I pinned a question in the comments. If your husband told you not to embarrass him, then his boss publicly revealed you had saved his family, would you go home and forgive the humiliation, or would that be the moment you finally walked away? Go to that pinned comment and tell me your honest opinion. I want to know where you draw the line between a painful marriage and a life too small to keep living. And if this story made you think of a quiet woman who has been treated like she has no history worth knowing, stay close to She Chose Herself. Every voice here helps another woman remember that being unseen does not mean being ordinary. My husband told me not to embarrass him. I stepped aside. Then his boss crossed a ballroom, took my hand, and said I had saved his grandson. For 16 years, that family had searched for me. For 14 years, my husband had looked at me and seen less. That night did not make me valuable. It only exposed the people who had failed to notice I already was.